She also won a writing award that year. While she was here as an undergraduate, she did a lot more than just be an excellent student. She founded a student organization to raise awareness about child sexual abuse while she was here. She served as a volunteer at Middleway House, a domestic violence center. In the fall of 2014, she participated in a study abroad program in India, where she resided with a host family, and she did research while she was there for her honors thesis on domestic violence in India. As I said, she graduated with a double major in criminal justice and psychology back in 2015. Rather than immediately going to law school upon graduation, she opted for a term of service with AmeriCorps, where she worked for a year as a counselor with College Possible, which is a nonprofit organization located in Minneapolis whose mission is to help young people from disadvantaged backgrounds gain access to higher education. Currently, she serves as a paralegal data manager for the Washington, D.C. Volunteer Lawyers Project, which provides free legal services to victims of domestic violence and children in the midst of custody disputes. So, one of the things that stands out about her is that not only does she have this commitment to learn, but also to use her education to serve others. So please join me in welcoming Jaclyn Lahr.
Thank you so much for that in-depth and kind introduction. I was honestly shocked and honored to be invited here today to speak before you all. It feels like both last week and ages ago that I was in your same position. And I'll be honest that my first thought was that I haven't been out of school long enough to really impart wisdom on you all. But as I was preparing this speech and reflected on my time both here at IU and afterward, I realized that there's already so much that I've learned, and there are definitely things that I wish someone would have told me. And I'm sure none of you can relate to this, but IU was not always my top choice. Being the youngest of three to attend this fine institution, I felt I'd gotten all that IU had to offer by visiting my siblings at their various performances, shows, and exhibitions, but I was wrong. Attending Indiana University was one of the best decisions I've ever made. This place became home, and it has afforded me opportunities I never thought imaginable. And as was mentioned during my time at IU, I was able to really develop and clarify my passions. And I don't know if I would have had the courage to pursue my dreams had I not come here. With the support of staff and like-minded individuals, I was able to start my own student organization. I volunteered at Middleway House. I got involved with student life and learning by promoting leadership initiatives on campus. And I had the chance of a lifetime to study abroad in India and conduct field research. And while all of these influenced what I hope to accomplish in undergrad and beyond, one experience in particular served as a catalyst in guiding my career goals and gave me the motivation to be so involved. This came in the form of a leadership retreat called Leadership the summer before my junior year. At this week-long retreat, I was surrounded by 70 fellow Hoosiers who all had the desire to make an impact in some way, whether locally or globally. We were challenged to be bold in creating our visions for the world while taking practical steps to make these visions a reality. It was at this retreat that I realized for the first time I could make my passion for gender equality and access to justice my career rather than just a hobby or an interest, and that I would have a community of at least 70 plus fellow Hoosiers to support me. So upon returning to campus, I was more motivated than ever to start pursuing ways to make my dream a reality. I started to seriously consider studying abroad, and I was hesitant at first because I had attempted studying abroad previously and things fell through. But with my newfound determination, I sought a program where I could combine research and a program with a social justice lens. And that's how I found my India program, where we would have 10 weeks of study followed by 4 weeks of research. So while there, I was able to conduct a case study on an organization called the Equal Community Foundation, which works to engage young men to prevent violence and discrimination against women. And I wanted to know if their gender equity training the boys were participating in was actually changing their attitudes toward women. So through this research project, I was able to talk to young men from the community who had gone through the program and some who hadn't. I was able to learn from the program facilitators what they wanted for their community and their hopes for their futures. And I gained insight into what it took to create lasting change at a grassroots level. So I incorporated all of this information into my senior thesis, which analyzed how engaging men can be a method of preventing domestic violence in India. And the whole process was incredibly eye-opening, and it further shaped my goals for the future. I realized that making lasting change is incredibly difficult, but not impossible. And it was through these experiences of engaging with both the university and the community around me that I was slowly able to piece together an answer for the dreaded question, what's next? And I'm sure this situation sounds familiar to you all, that starting day one of senior year, or perhaps even earlier, you were asked by every adult at every social gathering, so what are your plans after graduation? This is the most dreaded question. We all hate it. And yet I find myself doing it to current undergrads. And I remember the relief I felt when I was offered a position in April of my senior year. Not only that I had found something, but that I could also answer the dreaded question prior to donning the cap and gown. And I realized that for some, or maybe many of you here, you may not have an answer to that question or one that you particularly like. But don't worry, I'll come back to this point in a moment. For me, my answer to that question, as mentioned earlier, was service through AmeriCorps. And for those of you who aren't familiar, AmeriCorps is similar to the Peace Corps, but volunteers stay here in the U.S. I was fortunate enough to work at College Possible in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I advocated for college access and success for low-income students. And while there, I worked specifically with community college students with a wide range of educational goals, as well as unenrolled students looking to get back to school. And so while I was there, I learned so much about our public education system and how much it really takes for so many to try and get that bachelor's degree. And it reminded me not to take my education or my degree for granted. And while I had a great experience there, I learned that higher education was not where I was supposed to be. And while I wasn't necessarily pursuing my passion, my year of service allowed me to grow as a young professional and learn necessary skills needed to function in the real world work environment. So this leads me to my first two pieces of practical advice. The first is to maintain your current networks, and the second is to utilize your future connections. Both of these are real steps you can take to ensure success in your career or future endeavors. I know these things are often touted by career counselors, your academic advisors, but in my experience, it's actually helpful advice. It is precisely because I've stayed in touch with professors such as Dr. Oliver, other professors, and past mentors that I've had the opportunities I've had and why I'm even before you today. You never know when you may need that letter of recommendation or when a professional in your network thinks of the perfect job opportunity for you. Just like any relationship, though, it takes work. Stay connected by sending occasional email updates on how your new job, graduate program, or continued job search is going. Those who built relationships, surprisingly, do actually like hearing from you and hear how you're doing. For example, I still update one of my professors from my study abroad program, and through that communication, I'm able to hear the exciting updates of how the program is growing and changing. And as awkward as sending a random update may sound and feel, I can say from experience that it's worth it. In addition to staying in touch with your existing network, upon graduation, you have the opportunity to expand that network. An advantage of going to a large public institution such as ours is our huge alumni network. I did not realize how much of an advantage this was until I was talking with some friends who graduated around the same time as me from small liberal arts colleges in the Midwest. One in particular was struggling to find a job, and I had asked if she had tried reaching out to alumni from her program. And she replied in frustration that because her program was so small, there weren't really any alumni doing work in her field. So take advantage of our large alumni base. I guarantee that almost any city you end up in, there will be an IU Alumni Association and a matching Facebook group. And this is great, first, just for social connections. If you're relocating to a new city, it's a great way to meet people. Even up in the Twin Cities and Minnesota Gopher country, I was able to get together with a group of IU fans to watch basketball games. And it didn't hurt that they provided a free round of appetizers or two. Second, Hoosiers love talking to and networking with fellow Hoosiers. And I have a quick anecdote to illustrate my point. About halfway through my term of service, when I realized I didn't quite know what I wanted to do afterward, I started doing some job research. And there's an organization called International Justice Mission that I've always been interested in. So I figured I'd do some more research on the organization. So I looked up their LinkedIn page. And lo and behold, LinkedIn informed me that there were 2 staff members who graduated from IU. One was an accountant in HR, not quite my thing, but the other was a director of outreach and communications. So I thought this was my perfect opportunity. After sending her a simple LinkedIn message, trying to reach out and just ask about her experience, she ended up responding, excited to talk about her experiences with a fellow Hoosier. So long story short, we ended up having a 30-minute phone conversation about her experiences, and she invited me to contact her if I were ever in DC. And now I'm there. So don't be afraid to reach out to fellow alumni, no matter how far-fetched it seems. You never know where it may lead. Now to get a little more philosophical, I'd like to go back to how you are answering that question. What are your plans after graduation? Regardless of your answer, you should keep these 3 things in mind. First, take pride in where you are now. You have completed hundreds of hours of coursework, sacrificed time, money, and sleep. You have contributed to clubs, student groups, honor societies, and local organizations. You have built relationships and grown more into yourselves. No one knows what they are doing right out of college, and those that say they do are lying. We all do the best we can. And I sometimes felt like doing a year of AmeriCorps right out of college was somewhat of a cop-out because it didn't feel like a quote-unquote real job. But I grew so much in those 10 months. And who knows where I'd be if I'd started somewhere else. So whether you are continuing your education, starting in your career field, or your plans are still unknown, embrace the opportunities of this stage of life. Seek ways to continue to challenge yourself in whatever you are doing. I can tell you that nothing makes you feel more inexperienced than being a fairly fresh graduate in an office full of successful, highly qualified professionals with 15+ years of experience. We have a lot of time to figure it out. So enter this next stage of life, whatever it may be, with pride and confidence. Second, take healthy risks. Following my year of service in Minnesota, I knew I wanted to get back in the legal field. And that's how I ended up where I am now as a paralegal and data manager with the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project. And I feel so lucky to be in this position as it perfectly marries my interest of access to justice and preventing violence against women. But I would not have this job if I hadn't realized this. Now is the perfect time to take healthy risks. While life can certainly be easier in your comfort zone, it is also where it becomes easy to let life pass you by. Now I'm not talking about blowing your savings and doing something crazy in the name of discovering yourself, hence the modifier healthy, but it is by taking healthy risks that you can get closer to your goals. Think about it. When else will you have the freedom and ability to start somewhere new? To try something outside of your comfort zone? Because let's face it, making big changes will only get more difficult down the line. You may own property, have pets or children, have a spouse or other important relationships to maintain. So do not shy away from opportunities that are in your reach at this moment. Third, have the courage to pursue your passions. If you hate the field you end up in, do something about it. As much as it may pain your parents that you may not be using your degree to that, and I apologize to all the parents in the room, I say too bad, because that is the amazing thing about a liberal arts education. We live in a time where career paths are no longer linear, and we have been given the knowledge and skills to be adaptable and marketable in the modern workplace. Where would I be if I had let the fear of moving to a bigger city where the cost of living is honestly insane, the fear of placing myself in an environment where I knew very few people, get in the way? Certainly not at my current job. So don't let fear keep you from leaving your mark on the world. Now, I know this all may sound well and good, and some of you may doubt my sincerity, and I'll admit that adulting is hard, and I definitely don't have it all figured out. I have plans of pursuing a law degree, hopefully starting the fall of 2018, and sometimes the thought of returning to school terrifies me. But believe me when I say, as long as you have pride in where you are, you take healthy risks, and you have the courage to pursue your passions, everything will work out for the best. So in closing, I challenge you to think about how you answer that question of what's next. Maybe instead of listing off your soon-to-be employer or the name of your graduate program, you should rather answer with the why. Think of how much more interesting those conversations would be with the people in your life who refuse to stop asking what your plans after graduation are. You are not just taking a job title. You are pursuing a path you're interested in, and hopefully one you're passionate about. In the words of author and philosopher Howard Thurman, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go and do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Thank you.
Wow.